Russian program. We certainly need money for the Syrian program. And the Russians aren't committing enough. The Americans are faced with sequestration and across the board cuts on everything, including funding for chemical weapons destruction. And the Global Partnership, the group that was established in 2002 of 23 countries to work with the Russians primarily, but now with many countries, has really, since its 10th anniversary in 2012, has really backed off of any major financial commitment. So there are financial challenges. I also say here, don't underestimate public concerns and political power. Be transparent and involve stakeholders, preclude legal suits. So this should largely be the case in Syria today too, but I know Syria is a unique case because we have a civil war going on, and it will depend on where the stockpiles are, but we will continue to try to urge as much transparency as security really allows. But also recognize the inherent tension between cost, schedule, transparency, and safety, and that the ultimate goal is protection of public health and the environment. If you talk to the Director General of the OPCW, he'll say over and over again, this is sort of a mantra of the OPCW, we didn't get involved in, to rid the world of chemical weapons by hurting people. We're doing this so that, in fact, we have the ultimate protection of public health and the environment. And nobody, workers in particular, should not get hurt, or anybody downwind should not be hurt. So I think we have to use, obviously, the same issues for Syria today, too. And then I would say one key issue which Syria, is really, the Syrian situation is pretty unique in is we have the real opportunity to have the Russians and Americans work together in a very positive way. Which has not been the case actually for a long time. And so I'm really somewhat optimistic, given this very difficult, rocky relationship between Russia and the United States, that Syria will actually, ironically, in the long run, be very helpful. And then we have the issue of universality for all the treaties. I mean, not only the Chemical Weapons Convention, the Biological Weapons Convention, and the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and all the agreements under the IAEA, and the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, and others. The point here I'll make is that 6 countries still remain outside the treaty regime, aside from Syria, which is now joined: Angola, Egypt, Israel, Myanmar, Burma, North Korea, and South Sudan. And none of those are easy to deal with. A lot of us have worked those countries, with the exception of North Korea, which is totally incommunicado. There's been no communication, as far as I know, on this with North Korea. But all the others has been considerable communication on. In track 1, track 1.5, and track 2, government, non-governmental communication avenues. Angola has come to the annual meetings in the last couple of years. Looks like they want to join. Still a very, very much a developing country. It's a very small foreign ministry. I don't know when that might happen. I think Syria is a big step towards Israel and Egypt joining. Israel has signed but not ratified. Myanmar has also signed but not ratified. And so I think those top 4 countries really should come in soon. And I think the public pressure is now really on them, which is wonderful for the situation in the Middle East in particular. South Sudan eventually will come in, I think, once again, very much a new developing country, not much of a foreign ministry. Yeah?
Do you have a rough sense, even a guess, of the size of the stockpiles under this?
The only stockpiles we know about here would be North Korea. North Korea, I think, it's just a rough guess, probably 5,000 tons. Could be larger. It's big, I know. And it's deployed. It's weaponized and deployed. It's ready to, fire and obliterate Seoul, which is only within artillery range, as you may know, a few miles away. I'm not sure any of the other countries have stockpiles. I think the only ones we'd be suspicious of would be Israel and Egypt. And we know both those countries have built chemical weapons in the past. Egypt's used them against the Yemenis and the Israelis in the past. But my Israeli and Egyptian friends tell me they don't have stockpiles. But I really don't know. So we'll see. But one of the points I always try to make in press interviews these days is Israel and Egypt have to join. I mean, this is, there's no reason why they shouldn't follow Syria now at all. But, there's differences of opinion with that in a number of ways. Yeah?
Are there any suspicions that North Korea has used it against, say, their own citizens that are in these prisoner camps? Because I know, whenever people have gone out of there, they've always said like the ridiculous treatment that they've received there. So I don't know if there's been any kind of, like, the OPCW has actually got any kind of input from these people that have escaped and seeing if they've actually used anything on them. Or...
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I don't know. I've not seen any allegations of that at all, and it could be they could have used non-lethal, chemicals. I mean, we use lethal chemicals for executions here in the United States, which the rest of the world heavily criticizes us for. But that's an exception. That's actually allowed under the treaty. But whether they've used, non-lethal chemicals for torture or whatever in the prison camp, I don't know. That's a good question. There's been allegations too about Russian use of non-lethal chemicals, particularly the 2002 Moscow incident. There's been allegations against us, against the United States, for our use of Agent Orange in Vietnam, but that was long before the treaty went into force. Whether that's a chemical weapon or not, whether defoliants in general are chemical weapons. But the treaty essentially bans any use of any chemicals, period, in warfare. And so that raises the whole question about if you use tear gas in riot control, is that a violation of the treaty? It's generally thought not to be the case. But tear gas at times has killed people. And other riot control agents have killed people. So then the question is, well, was it a military use or was it, police and civilian use? So the whole gray area between lethal and non-lethal, which is gray, it's not a red line, as I said. It's a gray area, is always a big question that comes up at the annual meetings in The Hague, and how we differentiate that. There's been heavy criticism of Turkey in recent years, which is ironic because the Director General's from Turkey, actually. Because some of the Turkish military industry companies have been out selling rocket launchers and artillery shells, which they've publicly advertised as capable of being used with chemical agents. And so the Turkish delegation has actually gone back and shut a lot of this sales pitch down in Turkey, because that clearly was a violation of the treaty. You can still sell weapons, but you can't even design them for use with chemical agents at all. So, was there another hand up? Yeah.
Kind of loaded, but the BWC and the CWC both approach these weapons of mass destruction by basically just abolishing all of them, abolishing stockpiles. Why don't we use that approach for the NPT as well?
Good question. Good question. Yeah. I mean, one very positive conclusion from the CWC is that it's a non-discriminatory regime. Nobody's allowed to have any of the same stuff, no matter whether you're a big power, a small power, whether you're a Pacific Islander, whether you're Bermuda, which Bermuda was one of the last countries to join. It was like, we don't really worry about Bermuda, but it's nice to have them on board. But it is non-discriminatory. It's equally the same inspections, everything's the same. Whereas the non-proliferation regime, the non-proliferation treaty, is perceived by many, myself included, as a discriminatory regime. Certain countries are allowed to keep their their nuclear weapon stockpiles. But Article 6, of course, says they're supposed to get rid of those over time. It doesn't set any deadline. And that's where your big debates come. So I think one of the positive things to point out all the time about this very successful multilateral regime is that it's non-discriminatory, it's a level playing field, and that that's a lesson to be learned for other multilateral regimes. Maybe an argument either for more aggressively implementing the non-proliferation treaty for the permanent 5 nuclear members, and maybe also an argument possibly for developing a new nuclear weapons convention, which a lot of people are proposing, so we get away from the discriminatory regime and make a substitute. But I don't know the answer to that at all. Let me wrap up here quickly. Challenge of Syria. Come back to Syria where we started. We have to inspect and inventory everything Syria has. And it's in the middle of a civil war. We don't know all the sites really in Syria. Some people talk about 6 sites, some people talk about 20, some people talk about 40. If you read the news, just the last 2 weeks, you'll see that some of these sites you have to apparently move through rebel-held territory. So there's questions about whether the rebels will, provide a cease, or at least not fire at the inspectors the way they did in the original inspection in the first week of September, where one inspector, the driver of one of the vehicles, almost got killed. Thank God he didn't. So that's a big challenge, and we still have yet to really fully address that, but that's the ongoing issue now with the inspections going on. All weapons, agents, production, and lab facilities have to be destroyed. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about this. Some of the production facilities, if it's traditional chemical industry, can be converted, and that's happened in about a dozen countries. But those production facilities which are converted for commercial use have to be fully inspected on a regular basis. And I doubt in the current circumstances that would be allowed in Syria, but we'll see. And then, of course, full security and safety guaranteed for inspectors and workers. Nobody wants anyone to get killed or injured at all in this operation. It'd be the last thing we want. I was with the inspectors in The Hague who had come back from Syria on the very first inspection, the first week of September. And they were all sort of joking about wearing their Kevlar vests. They'd never worn